I want to bring up to the stage, though he's only like 4 feet away from me, one of my very good friends, just one of the most interesting artists you're ever going to meet, fantastic bassist, composer, human being, the great and powerful Andres Martin. So, welcome.
Thank you.
And I had Andres on the podcast maybe back at the beginning of 2016 or something like that. And I see you every 2 months or something like that. And I've been wanting to chat. There's so many things we could chat about, and we're at events that we're so busy we both collapse and at the end of the day. So this is a great opportunity to connect. You've been busy.
Yes.
Andres played a fantastic recital at the 2019 International Society of Bassists Convention of his own music. And we were chatting last night about just his journey from performing bass growing up in Argentina to starting to compose, which really, if we rewind to about 2011, you had written... What did you written in 2011, 8 years ago?
What I wrote?
Yeah, what had you written at that point?
At that point, I was only a bass duo and a couple of pieces for solo bass, and I was just starting to write my first bass concerto.
Okay, and your bass concerto, so many of your pieces, but your bass concerto has been played at Carnegie Hall. It was the piece that the winner of the 2017 Bradisich competition played. People played your music all over the world. How many minutes of double bass music have you written now? I think you know.
About 3 hours.
Okay, so 3 hours of music.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know I wrote 2 pieces that last for 1 hour.
Yeah.
And maybe 20 more words. I'm really not sure.
So tell me about that, getting inspired to really go all in on composing. We were chatting about the Bradisich, the Young Soloists program,
Yes.
and just talk about that experience.
Well, I was always dreaming about performing live and with orchestra and doing recitals, and I always was in love with traditional repertoire for the solo double bass in classical music. I also come from a popular background. I was playing heavy metal until I was 18. Seriously.
Yep.
But by then I was also like locked in my room without having an idea how was out there in the world. How was the level of the playing? I only had recordings, just a few of them. There was at that time there were barely no YouTube yet. So the first time I got a great opportunity to go out, I went to the Bradisich Elite Soloist Camp with four students. We had a chance to have lessons with him for a week, private lessons. And so I brought a repertoire of solo works, Bottesini, some Bach, and what I thought it was going to be some new things like transcriptions. I was playing Rachmaninoff cello sonata, which was at that point was my biggest achievement. So after 4 days having private lessons with Jeff, and he gave me the most amazing advices. Last lesson I show up and I was like, I have nothing else to play for you. We already gone through all our repertoire, and we started talking, and I told him I was just starting to write for bass. I started studying composition 5 years before this, but I was writing only for orchestra and other instruments, and just barely for bass because I felt like I was not ready. Bass was too important for me. So I could write badly for other instruments, but for bass, it had to be great. So I was just experimenting with a few pieces for solo bass, and he asked me to play for him. And when I did it, his whole face changed, and he asked me, "Can you play this in the afternoon lesson for everyone?" And so I did it, and after that evening, I realized I had something special. And he made me realize I had my own voice through my own music. So that was a breaking point. And after that, I started writing more and more for bass. And I found out that if I can show up and play my music, I will make a big difference and I will be unique. So I still play the standard repertoire. I still love it, but most of it I play my own music. And so, well, there was no turning back.
I think one of the first pieces I heard of yours was Tango Across the Border.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard it live, and I think Jeremy Kurtz Harris was playing it, and I think from the stage they commented on how crazy hard it was.
Yes.
Okay. Why did you write that?
That was one of the first pieces I wrote. I had lots of energy, so I wrote a lot of notes and lots of complicated odd rhythms. Then within the years, I learned to use the eraser wisely. But back then, I felt like the more I had, it was the better. So the piece is really hard. And it came from an angry place because I was actually, I built a wonderful friendship with Jeremy. So we were getting together to play music, to play bass duets, with an international border in the middle. So he lives in San Diego, I live in Tijuana, so every time we want to get together, one of us has to go across the border. So one day I was heading to his place to play, and I was sent to the secondary inspection. I don't know, maybe I was not well dressed or whatever. So I spent like 3 hours waiting for someone to interview me, only to ask me, why did it send you to you here? So in those 3 hours, I was really angry because I was spending all the time we had for rehearsal sitting there. But I had my notebook. So I started writing this duo. The name was Tango Across the Border, a little angry piece with lots of notes. And so that's the story behind it. So I still perform it. It's really fun, but it's I have to be in the mood.
Well, speaking of the border, I've been fortunate enough to come down to Tijuana to Andres' festival a couple of times, and this past year, he brought Gary Carr down, special guest,
yes,
and wrote a piece for Gary. And the timing with just the political climate couldn't have been, I want to say couldn't have been better, but it's not a good thing. But tell us about The Heart Has No Borders. Yeah, tell us about that piece and that whole experience.
Well, when I started the conversation with Gary about he coming down, he mentioned he would like to do a statement. So I offered to write a piece for him, and we came up with this idea that the true things, they cannot respect limits. And I mean, going beyond the political side of it, we built so many beautiful things that could be stopped if we cannot see each other. It's just basic, and you can experience that in many layers in your normal life. So I had this idea to write a piece that starts beautiful, expressing how beautiful it is to, integrate different cultures, different persons doing one thing, because music is about that, is to integrate different human beings and share a message and deliver. So start beautiful, then present a darker reality, because our reality now is very complex, not always beautiful. But at the end, since was a bass festival like this, we had a Baja California orchestra to join us for performing this music. We have Gary performing as a soloist, and we have 50 bass players. So one thing I love to do, is to be able to play a piece with an orchestra in a proper size bass section, which in a normal symphony will be 8 basses. In my brain, it's like 40 basses. So we have a normal chamber orchestra with 40 basses, and it sounds just about right.
Yes,
okay?
It does.
So at the very end, my idea was to use all these basses and create a wall, just like the gladiator, like Roman gladiators, where there's shields, like one base like here, the other one like here. And we created a wall that was dividing the orchestra from the audience before the piece ends. So this is an aim to have an experience of, okay, this is something beautiful going up here, and also the audience is something beautiful because we play for the audience. So what happens if suddenly we have a wall like this? So it was a really powerful moment, very moving, because the audience never knew that was going to happen. They were engaged with the music, and suddenly we blocked everything. And for us, we were performing, and suddenly there was no audience. And it was weird, but moving at the same time. And when after we finished the piece, it was just a minute or something, it was complete silence. We didn't know what we were doing, and the audience didn't know what to do. So we opened, and we could see each other again. It was very moving. I saw many, many people in tears, and many of them were in the orchestra. So, the message, I think, it was that, well, we should work to be able to see each other and do not interrupt this. So when we started thinking about this, and I was writing the piece, there was it was not the momento that came a few days before the world premiere, and the border got shut down for a day. There was a crisis with some migrants that came to Mexico, and they arrived to the border, and they were desperate, and they started running to try to get across the border. It was crazy, many of them fighting within each other. So for security reasons, they closed the border, and I was waiting for 3 faculty members that were coming from the US to join us in this thing. So we actually had the actual experience to be locked. And actually, I was afraid because many of my faculty were from US, and now they were like, am I going to be able to go home after this? So it was crazy because they wanted to be here, and we wanted to have them. And after all, well, everything went back to normal, and we were able to do something beautiful. So this is going to be one of the most precious moments in my life, I'm sure.
It was really, really something. I was such a pleasure to be a part of that event.
I'm glad you were.
We need to wrap up here in a minute because we've got people wanting to check out shops, but I have to ask you briefly about one thing more. And Andres was performing in the bass convention in Lucca, Italy last summer, which was the hottest I can ever remember being. The sweat was dripping off every performer. If you look at photos, it looks like everybody just got done working out. But there, you made an interesting comment. You played a wonderful recital, and we were chatting, and you were talking about starting to work out, and you said if you had to give up practicing or working out, I think you were leaning towards you would rather give up just in terms of what's good for you and you as an artist and a musician and a human being and everything. Just talk a little bit about.
At this point in our careers, time is the most precious and complicated thing to find out because we are traveling, because we have many things to do, many responsibilities. So yes, a year ago I started working out, and it really changed me in many layers. And I don't know why, but it made me a better musician. It made me a better performer. It improved my performance, my accuracy, many things, and especially because it gave me a lot of energy. Playing bass, always, it's very energy demanding. And especially to me, my music is very intense, and I need more energy to play. I remember you asked me, how can you play so intensely and no die in the middle? So yeah, and there was some truth in this because before this I felt like every time I had a recital, after the recital, I had to go to sleep. No, forget about drinks, dinner, party. No, sleep. I was, in some days I just had to sit after playing my recital. So this gave me like a big pump of energy and made me be more awake. So if I can't practice every day, I'll try to make my practice efficient. But I'm not gonna give up on being fit and feel like I can keep this. Yeah.
It's a good lesson. Andres, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.